Hello everyone, this is Mr. Rain, and it's a shame, but it seems like I'm going to be ending this year on a sour note, at least in regards to the videos that I put up. That being said, do look forward into next year because things are changing and I will be posting a lot more content than I typically have in the past. But for now, with all that being said, let's get into the subject. Recently there is this game called Escape from Tarkov, which is a survival tactical game developed by Battlestate Games. And essentially there are some accusations that have been going on about their website not being secure and there being a loophole which allows hackers to obtain fragile information of their customers. Some customers which have said that they have had a number of charges on their credit cards for multiple purchases of the same game, and then their main account being banned due to hacking. And now, of course, this is all a he said, she said type of thing, so there's no way that we can prove which side is right or which side is wrong. But when these accusations begin to pile up, you begin to wonder who is actually legitimate and who actually is not, and who's telling the truth and who's trying to cover things up. And unfortunately, the way that Battlestate Games have been taking this approach, it seems very much like they are trying to cover things up. One of their larger YouTubers, or at least more passionate YouTubers, Eroktic Gaming, has gotten his account copyright striked 40 times over from 40 of his videos, each of which covering Escape from Tarkov. Now the thing is that not all of these videos are negative videos about the game. This guy loves the game, this guy loves playing it, and he loves making videos talking about new patches, new weapons, how to play the game, tips and tricks, the whole ordeal. So it wasn't just him bantering on and on about negativity of the game. This was a guy who felt like he was a part of a community and wanted to do what he could to show the good and the bad and let the developers know where they should improve. That being said, recently he took on this issue of these possible allegations of there being loopholes within the company's website that has been leading into these users getting their accounts stolen and having multiple accounts bought through their credit card. And so again, Battlestate Games' decision was to put up a long paragraph on Facebook stating what the issues were, and as well as trying to essentially delete a YouTuber's channel in the process to, again, feels like covering things up. Now, Escape from Tarkov, unfortunately, is not a game that has been under controversy before. This is something that has been a bit constant with the game in regards to bugs and issues and just overall development time. I've heard about this game, I don't know how many years ago, and I was very excited to know that it was coming out and to almost be ready to play it. The problem was that when the game first came out, when people were actually able to get their hands on it, the game was poorly optimized and it showed. And it took them forever to optimize it. And I was already starting to lose interest because of how long they were taking. But it didn't stop there, because continuing with that trend, there were, again, bugs and glitches that didn't seem to be fixed and, for whatever reason, weren't being addressed directly from the developers. One bug that I've heard of, which I'll say maybe a year ago, was that, I believe it was covered by Eroktic Games himself as well, again, but the problem was that, the main problem was that the rate of fire of the weapons were being tied to the player's frame rate. Now, in order to make that not sound like it was Japanese, every weapon has a rate of fire in regards to how many rounds per minute that they can shoot endlessly, in, say, an endless loop. And in games, this should be a statistic that is tied directly to the weapon and not to the client and not to the player. However, somehow, that value is tied to the frame rate. And there are other games such as Fallout 76 that has issues similar to this. So it's not entirely uncommon, but it's still something that worries me because frame rate already plays a big role in regards to playing a game competitively and playing a game well. And just to know that having an even higher frame rate could potentially overpower certain weapons is just an insane idea and one that frankly should not exist. So say a weapon that has 500 that can shoot 500 rounds per minute in a game. If their frames per second is higher than whatever standard they were using, then instead of the weapon shooting at 500 rounds per minute, that weapon could be shooting somewhere around 800 rounds per minute, or even 1,000 rounds per minute. And now you have a extremely lethal and extremely toxic weapon that was not actually designed to be as lethal because the frame rate is tying into the statistics of the weapon. It's weird, it's dumb, it shouldn't exist, but it did. It existed in Escape from Tarkov. I assume they fixed it at some point, but it's still something that worries me, just knowing that a game engine has that ability, to say the least. But moving onwards from that, this is a big deal because as a YouTuber, as someone who wants to put videos up on YouTube and talk about games and the game industry, this is a crimson red flag, and you can throw out as many red flags as you want along with that. The reason being is because these developers had enough of Eroktic gaming, and they were tired of hearing the negativity and the criticisms that you offered to the community and to the developers. And whoever's running the Facebook site for Battlestate Games, along with a lengthy post, had a section that talked specifically about this guy and said that, yeah, they don't want him. They didn't want him in this community. They don't want him to be tied to the game at all. And that's just a bad decision from the developers. They're like, there's no developer team that should tell you that they don't want you playing their game. And there's only very few exceptions that I would take, with the primary one being about hacking and cheating. And if you are hacking and cheating, then yeah, I can understand if you don't want that person playing your game. That's why you have an anti-hack system. That's why you create an in-house anti-hack system. And you do as many precautionary measures that you can in order to hinder the performance of these hackers and cheaters and make it so they are as non-existent as physically possible. But this guy wasn't doing that. He wasn't cheating. He wasn't hacking. He was trying to use the game the way that comes to every other person and play it as legitimately as possible and point out any flaws that the game had. Anyone should be able to do that. And even if his claims are false, even if what he says is not right and it's not actually true, you still can't say that you don't want him playing your game. You can address his points point by point. You can tell us why he's wrong point by point. And you can do whatever you want to say whatever you want. Make videos, do something that shows that this guy's wrong. Evidence, in other words. And if you're not able to do that, if you're not able to provide that, then it's very difficult for the community, and me personally, to take you seriously. Because you're trying to shut down the voice of a person who loves your game, who played the game like crazy, who put up videos every week or every month, and showed the ins and outs of the game. And you don't want a guy like that making videos for your game just because he said things that weren't exactly positive. This is something that has occurred in the past. When Microsoft released Xbox One, there was that big debacle about there being an underhanded promotional sponsorship for anyone within the Machinima channel, or associated with the Machinima, to make videos on the Xbox One using a specific tag and saying nothing negative about the Xbox, or the way the games performed, or any of the games that the player was playing on said Xbox. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, to be honest. That's depending on channel by channel. If you're someone who critiques games and makes reviews and does talk about games and the gaming industry at a very crucial and critical standpoint, then you probably shouldn't be taking those type of sponsorships. However, if it is a game or a product that you do support and you do enjoy, then there really isn't any issue, because you're not really going to try and talk negatively about that game anyways. You will talk about certain things here and there, certain things that can be improved, but for the sake of promotional content, you can leave that on the sidelines for another video in the near future. The whole point of these type of sponsorships is so that there's no negative press, or as limited negative press as physically possible. And Escape from Tarkov doesn't have that. They don't have an NDA, as far as I know. They don't have sponsorships, as far as I know. They just rely on word of mouth, which is fine, but then they try to shut the voices that talk negatively about their game, which is not fine, because unless you're paying them, they have no reason to not talk negatively about your game. They have no reason to not point out the flaws or the bugs or the optimization issues, and so on and so on and so on and so on. You can, again, unless you have evidence, unless you can point out proof that you are in the right, then by all means do so. I'm not here to take a side. I'm not here to tell you what you're doing is wrong. What I am trying to tell you is what you're doing is very sketchy, and something that's really pushed me away from ever wanting to play your game at all. I don't want to deal with buggy AI, which has been in the game since forever. I don't want to deal with bad optimization and bad performance, which is still in the game. I don't want to deal with the chance of a bug occurring where someone's weapon is going to perform 3 times better than what it's supposed to perform just because he has a higher frame rate than I do. And the list goes on. Every game is going to have a flaw. Every game is going to have issues, especially a game that is developed by an indie team or by a small team with a small budget and with a limited budget. I understand that greatly, but you do what you can and you make the game that you can make. And that's essentially the issue that developers, like indie developers and even some publishers, are feeling now. They're no longer able to just copy and paste the game or copy and paste a genre or design. They have to come up with something that they can actually build and support. And if they're not able to support it, then they can't build it. And if they can't build it, then they're out of the job. That's essentially the bottom line. So, again, as I do in most of these videos, this is just all word of advice. It's just how I see things, how I perceive these events occurring. It's very difficult for me to take the side of a developer or a publisher that refuses to show any evidence or any information that they can show in order to put these issues to rest. And then at the same time, I'm not going to take side with a YouTuber or a journalist or anyone that's not associated directly with that company, because I don't know what their intentions are. However, when I see that the guy has been putting up videos for years covering the game in both a positive light and a critical light, then I understand that this guy enjoys this game. He loves the game. He supports it. He wants to see the game grow, and he's a little disappointed with where the game is at. I can understand that. I don't have to be a developer or publisher to understand that. I understand that greatly. I feel the same way about a number of different games, and there's not really much that he can do. There's not really much that I can do. But this is just a problem that I wanted to bring to light, because this is a very dark corner of the gaming industry and a very shadowy gray place that shouldn't exist to begin with. And I am here to basically expose those type of issues and just show you what I feel is right, what I feel is wrong, situation by situation. Not every situation is going to be the same. Not every situation is going to have the same solution. You have to take things on a case by case and then decide who's right, who's wrong, and you decide what you want to do with your money. For me, I was interested in Tarkov when the game was first announced. I was still interested in it when it was released. I was losing interest when I heard that it had poor optimization. I was losing even more interest when I saw the turnaround in regards to the development updates. I began losing even more interest when more promises were falling by the wayside, and the game began to become a lot more sluggish in its development. So, not even for Eroktic's comments and then being shut down directly from Battlestate Games, but just because of the lack of care that these developers have shown over the years of their product, I simply just cannot buy their game. I've lost complete and total interest. There is no reason for me to play Escape from Tarkov. There is no reason, there's nothing unique that the game offers anymore. Anything that the game had up its sleeve is now gone. Anything unique or original that the game has is no longer unique and original. There are other games that do the same thing. They may not do the same thing exactly, but you get a very similar experience. And with developers who are actually competent, actually want to have a community, and will not try to shut down YouTubers just because they said something bad about their game. So that is it. I am Mr. Rain. I will see you guys real soon.